There was a tree that made poverty impossible. It grew without planting. It produced without farming. Every autumn, without asking anything of you, it dropped enough food to carry a family through winter. For 40 million years, it was a permanent fixture of the eastern forest. Then, in 1876, a single shipment of ornamental trees arrived from Japan. Nobody inspected them. Nobody tested them. And the most catastrophic ecological disaster in American history began in silence. By 1940, it was over. 4 billion trees. Gone. We did not lose the American chestnut because it failed. We lost it because the government that should have protected it chose to ignore the scientists who predicted exactly what would happen. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. The archive opens in the Appalachian Mountains. The year is 1890. A mountain family in western North Carolina rises before dawn. They own no land. They have no cash. But in September, they walk into the forest and come home with bushels of chestnuts. The nuts are roasted on iron skillets. They are ground into flour for bread. They are boiled into porridge. They are fed to the hogs that will be sold at market. The harvest pays their winter taxes and fills their cellar. This is Castanea dentata, the American chestnut. It was called the bread tree of the mountains, and the name was not poetic. It was literal. In a region where soil was thin, farms were small, and poverty was permanent. The chestnut was the difference between eating and not eating. Appalachian families called it their bank account in the trees. The nuts fell every autumn without fail, reliable as the turning of leaves. The tree itself was extraordinary by any measure. It grew to 100 feet tall, straight and fast, reaching full canopy in 20 years. Its wood was naturally rot-resistant. A fence post cut from chestnut lasted a century without chemical treatment. The tannin in its bark was the finest in the world for curing leather. Every part of the tree gave something. The Cherokee made bread from crushed nuts, treated heart trouble with a tea from year-old leaves, and dressed wounds with infusions from young sprouts. Oral histories describe the harvest as a massive community event. Entire families moved through the forest in October, filling wagons and baskets, singing under a canopy so dense that 1 in every 4 trees in the Appalachian Mountains was a chestnut. On some ridges, that number reached 1 in 3. The nutritional profile was what made it so essential. Unlike most nuts, the chestnut is not primarily fat. It is 45% carbohydrate, making it biologically closer to a grain than to a walnut or almond. It carries 715 milligrams of potassium per 100 grams, nearly twice the amount in a banana, along with significant vitamin C, folate, and copper. It was, in every measurable sense, a grain that grew on a tree. Without irrigation, without plowing, without purchasing seeds from anyone. A single mature American chestnut produced up to 6,000 nuts per year. 1 tree. Free food every autumn for 600 years. The hogs of Appalachia ate them, and their fat marbled in ways corn-fed hogs could never match. The pork from chestnut-finished hogs was considered the finest in America. By the 1890s, 20 million pounds of chestnuts were being harvested annually, filling rail cars destined for New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. Street vendors in every major city built their livelihood around them. The smell of roasting chestnuts on a cold corner was the smell of the American winter. Then it ended. In 1876, a nurseryman named S.B. Parsons imported Japanese chestnut trees to Long Island. A few years later, thousands more were brought in. By 1900, USDA plant explorer David Fairchild was importing Asian nursery stock from across the continent without any inspection protocol. Imports had been unchecked. Inside the USDA, one man pushed back. Charles Marlott, an entomologist and Fairchild's rival, warned publicly that unregulated imports were a biological gamble. He wrote that the greatest danger is often from something you do not know about. Marlott was right. Somewhere in those thousands of Japanese shipments, a fungus called Cryphonectria parasitica made the crossing. Asian chestnuts had co-evolved with this fungus for millions of years. They carried it silently, showing no symptoms. The American chestnut had never encountered it. It had zero defense. In 1904, Herman Merkel, chief forester at the Bronx Zoological Park, noticed orange cankers spreading across the chestnuts on his grounds. He sent samples to mycologist William Murrill, who identified the unknown pathogen. Murrill's assessment was chilling and unambiguous. He warned his colleagues that this blight would kill every chestnut in America. The fungus enters through any microscopic wound in the bark. It grows beneath the surface, killing the cambium in a ring around the trunk. Once girdled, the tree above the wound chokes and dies. It spread at 50 miles per year, carried on the wind, on the feet of birds, and by the exact same mail-order nursery trade that had brought it in. Legislators tried to stop it, but corporate interests stepped in. Marlott drafted the Plant Quarantine Act, giving the USDA authority to inspect and halt dangerous imports. From 1909 to 1912, the American Association of Nurserymen aggressively lobbied Congress to block the bill. Their business depended on unrestricted, unregulated imports. Lobbied for profit. 3 years of corporate lobbying delayed the act. By the time it finally passed in 1912, the blight had already crossed into Virginia, Maryland, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. It was too late. What followed was a blind panic that made the loss exponentially worse. State governments organized massive cutting campaigns, hacking down blighted trees. In the rush to save the lumber before it spoiled, logging crews clear-cut millions of acres. In doing so, they inadvertently destroyed the rare trees that might have possessed natural genetic resistance. Forests that held out the biological key to recovery were leveled for quick timber value. The government had advised landowners to harvest before the trees were ruined, effectively eliminating the species' only chance at natural adaptation. By 1940, 4 billion trees were gone. A forest that had taken 40 million years to establish was functionally eradicated in 40 years. The economic impact on Appalachia was absolute. Families who had relied on the autumn harvest to pay taxes and feed livestock lost the foundation of their survival at the exact moment the Great Depression arrived. Blair Carbor, a biology professor who grew up in central Pennsylvania, later wrote, "I was born in 1930, and I only remember dead trees." The tanning industry collapsed. Communities built around the chestnut trade were left with nothing. The government attempted restoration and abandoned it twice. The USDA ran a breeding program starting in the 1930s, declared it a failure, and shut it down in 1960. Another program continued until 1970, and then also quietly closed. 30 years of effort thrown away. Private citizens had to take over what the government would not sustain. In 1983, the American Chestnut Foundation was established, launching a multi-decade back-cross breeding program to cross American chestnuts with disease-resistant Chinese varieties. But then came the modern shortcut. Researchers at a public university developed a transgenic tree called Darling 58, named after the New York construction magnate who funded the project. By inserting a wheat gene that neutralizes the acid the blight produces, they believed they had solved the problem chemically in a lab. In 2020, they petitioned the USDA for deregulation. seeking permission to release these modified trees into wild forests. A for-profit company had already signed a licensing deal, anticipating millions in seedling sales once the government approved it. The ultimate public restoration project had been captured for commercial purposes. But by 2023, the field trials revealed a catastrophic reality. The transgenic trees were growing shorter and slower than promised. Mortality was alarmingly high. Then came the ultimate admission. All research since 2016 had been conducted on the wrong tree. A lab error had supplied the wrong pollen. 7 years of safety and growth data had been collected on a completely different genetic variant. The flagship modified savior was a failure. But the chestnut does not need corporate approval to survive. Because the blight only kills the wood above ground, the ancient root systems are still alive. Across the Appalachian forest today, millions of native sprouts push up from century-old stumps, trying to reach the canopy before the blight finds them again. And there are true survivors. Scattered through the forests of the Midwest and New England, a few old-growth chestnuts escaped the initial wave of infection. One of them, the Adair tree in Kentucky, has survived the blight for decades and still produces fruit. Scientists study it. Its genetics may hold what 120 years of programs could not manufacture. If you want to plant this legacy today, Chinese chestnuts are available from nurseries across the country. They tolerate poor soil, require no irrigation, and produce large, highly nutritious nuts in just 3 to 5 years. They co-evolved with the blight and are nearly immune. One tree, properly sited, will feed your family for 600 years. The American Chestnut Foundation also distributes hybrid back-cross seeds carrying genetics that are 15/16 American chestnut, giving the species a genuine chance at natural recovery without modification, without patents, without a corporate middleman. The American chestnut did not fail. It was not replaced by a superior crop. It was destroyed by regulatory cowardice, protected too late, and abandoned by the institutions that caused the disaster. But the bread tree of the mountains is still here, stunted, waiting, trying to reach the light. It has not stopped trying in 80 years. Neither should we. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the bell. Every like, every share, and every comment helps replant the knowledge they let die. The next vault opens soon.